This is where we find Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel in Rehoboth Beach. Mike, great to see you. Those waves looking real rough behind you.
They are. Good afternoon from Rehoboth Beach. I grew up in this area, and it never lets you down. The Atlantic with a nor'easter or any kind of tropical system. Fortunately, this is a nor'easter, and fortunately, one of the elements, one of the impacts has dropped off the list. Heavy rain and flooding. We've got a lot of dry air that's wrapped around the southwest side of the storm from well off the southeast coast, and we've had very little rain here through the morning, about a quarter inch, that's it. So they've dropped the flood watches here for the state of Delaware, and Maryland's fine too. The concern is right out here. Look at the Atlantic coming right up here to the dune line. Here it is. High tide was 45 minutes ago, so we're past high tide, and the water's still coming up to the dune line. Lincoln, let's look down to the south, and you can see the water. It has been encroaching into the dunes, and we're losing some sand on this side of the fence, on the west side of the fence. So the beach erosion will continue to be a problem through tomorrow night. We've got a coastal flood warning through 8 o'clock tomorrow evening, so we've got two more high tides, one coming in around 1 a.m. tomorrow morning, Monday morning, and another one tomorrow afternoon about 1:30, 1:45. So those two high tides are going to take out more beach, and we'll have some more coastal flooding, some of those back bays, and some of those areas that are prone to flooding as the water gets pushed in and around and comes in from the west with the high tides. Let's bring in Captain Jeff Giles, who is from the city of Rehoboth and also in charge of the lifeguards here. They're off for the season now, but you live here and you've been through the whole summer here. Let's compare this to Hurricane Aaron, wrong Hurricane Aaron, that went offshore, and also Imelda just a couple of weeks ago. How does the water and surf compare to those two systems?
This seems much worse. We're actually getting more inundated with the water this time. And also the waves, I think you were telling us, is about 10.5 feet.
Yeah.
That's about even with the other ones, but we're getting more of a, I think it's taking more beach away.
Yeah, the buoy right off Bethany has peaked at 10.5. The winds, though, have been steady at about 25 to 30. Highest gust I've seen was at the inlet, the Indian River Inlet, about 45 miles an hour. But we do expect higher winds through this afternoon into this evening.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't last real long, because I think it's just continuing to take the sand from us. So hopefully Mother Nature gives it back.
And we had beach replenishment here last year.
Yeah.
Summer.
Yeah.
And when the tide goes out here, there's plenty of beach.
Yeah.
It's you'd say, what, about 45, 50 yards higher than it is on a normal day?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all the way up into our banks here and in the boardwalks right here. So
here comes another wave of
coming through.
Water and sea foam. Thankfully, the water temperature is still pretty pleasant.
70 degrees.
Not too bad for mid-October.
Yeah.
I saw some folks in the water here on Thursday.
Not a good day for a swim.
No. I appreciate you stopping by. And what do you do during the off-season?
I still work for the city and help out, and but man, 6 months to go and we'll be rolling in this again. So
can you believe that?
No, I can't.
Well, let's hope we don't lose too much beach.
You got
Thanks for joining us. Captain Jeff Giles with the lifeguard here at Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. So the winds are persistent northeast, 25 to 30, gusting 40 to 45. We do have the high wind warning up through tomorrow morning, and we could see gusts 50 to 60 miles an hour, and that could cause some minor damage, maybe knock out a little power. But once again, let me emphasize, when you go inland, the winds drop off a fair amount. I was staying about a mile and change inland. It's not nearly as gusty. And over inland, Georgetown, Salisbury, you go 30 miles inland and the peak gusts have been around 30 or so. So this is all about, Michael, the coast, the wave action, the erosion, and the coastal flooding here on the Maryland, Delaware beaches. But boy, what a scene today. Look at the froth, look at the sea foam. And there was a lot of folks out here getting photo ops. I can tell you that. They're all up and down the boardwalk getting their pictures and getting their photo ops today.
Yeah, listen, Mike, you are caught in a sea foam storm is what it looks like. And if you can still hear me, we actually just got a wind gust. This is a newest gust report of 51 miles per hour there on Rehoboth Beach. Mike, curious, when do you think we'll see the most intense part of this storm system pass by you?
Well, the storm right now is still down off south of Cape Hatteras. We expect a secondary low to form and then weaken tomorrow and then move out on Tuesday. So I think the worst of the wind will be from this afternoon through early tomorrow morning, and then by tomorrow afternoon, the winds will subside. We're still going to have a steady onshore wind into Tuesday, but not the gustiness. By Tuesday and the rest of the week, the sun is going to be out. So it's going to be a great Tuesday through the weekend into next week. But getting there, we're going to have this, but the rainfall is not going to be an issue with all that dry air coming in, and as I mentioned, not even a half an inch so far. We may get some more rain, that's not out of the question, Michael. The heavier rain's now falling up the Jersey Shore, Long Island, and coastal Connecticut, and up towards the Cape and the islands. Temperature right now, by the way, 65 degrees, so it's a pretty comfortable nor'easter. I've been in some of those in my career where the temperature's about 45 or 50, and I want to tell you, this is much more pleasant. When you get wet, look at the sea foam blowing. When you get wet at 45 degrees, boy, you're chilled to the bone. But today, not bad in the mid-60s, even though we have this gusty wind. Trying to keep the hat on, too.
Yeah, I can tell you're hanging on to that hat for dear life, that's for sure. Mike, thank you so much for that report and that analysis out of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, where, again, it is a sea foam storm, compliments of our nor'easter that we're continuing to see. Mike, we'll check back in with you in just a bit.
I'm going to be joined now by Fox Weather storm specialist Mike Seidel. And Mike, I mean, brutal conditions there, and we're seeing reports of, some big impacts along the beach itself. Kind of walk us through what you saw at high tide.
Well, high tide was an hour and a half ago, Steve, but look at this. The water is still coming up to the dune line and eating away. It's hard to see, but we've got the fence here, which helps overall. But the water gets up here, and we're getting a bit of a cut in the beach. Talked to Captain Jeff Giles from the Rehoboth Beach Patrol, and he said this is the highest it's been all season. Now, remember, we had Aaron who went off the coast, and then we had Imelda producing big waves, swell coming in and causing beach erosion. But this is the highest the water has come up, and you can see, even though we're an hour and a half past high tide, the water is still coming up almost to where it was an hour and a half ago. We still have two more high tides of concern. Yes, about 1 a.m. in the morning after midnight tonight, and then early tomorrow afternoon about 1:30. Those tides are going to potentially be higher, and that's why the coastal flood warning is up here on the Maryland-Delaware coast until 8 p.m. Monday. The other issue is the high winds. We've gusted up to 51 in Ocean City. Highest gust I've seen on the Delaware coast so far, 45 miles an hour. Even offshore, the wind isn't really any stronger. Remember, with a cold core system like a nor'easter, the wind is spread out. With a tropical system, the wind is tighter. So if you're closer to the center, you get stronger winds. But with this, we're not getting stronger winds because it is spread out. So the buoy offshore is still not much higher than it is here, gusts to 45. Wave heights at the buoy just off the beach, just down the coast, about 15 minutes. Beautiful Bethany Beach, Delaware. Wave heights reported peaking 10 to 11 feet. And you look out here at these waves just curling and crashing in, caused by the wind. The wind creates the waves. It transfers the energy down to the surface of the Atlantic. And look at these waves, wow. And there are a lot of folks coming out here today just to get a photo op, get some video. Down in Ocean City, the cruising, the cars, all the great looking cars were here Friday and Saturday. They've cleaned out the inlet parking lot because the water there is in the parking lot, if you're familiar with Ocean City, Maryland. Rainfall is turning out not to be an issue. The flood watches have been dropped for this area. We've had about a quarter inch of rain. Right now it's kind of misty. Also feeling some of that salt and that sea foam blowing in my face, but we're out of the woods on that. So much dry air coming around the southwest side of the storm, the upper low actually, and that is helping us out on the rainfall angle. The other thing is we're expecting another low to develop off the coast here, from here to Jersey later today and tonight. That will take over as the primary low. That's going to keep the wind up tomorrow, the wave action, the surf, and by Tuesday, that's going to move out to sea. So we've got today, tonight, tomorrow on these beaches here in Maryland and Delaware. Look out. Again, reemphasizing the fact that if you go inland, the wind drops off, and without the rain element, it's just kind of a cloudy, breezy, on and off showery day when you go about 25 or 30 miles inland. Right here on the coast, though, you get the full brunt of the wind, Steve. Steven, there's no friction to stop it. And these waves just cranking out here. What an angry Atlantic right now as we get a little bit of a heavier shower blowing in on that northeast wind. By the way, the winds are sustained at about 25 to 30 miles an hour. So that's persistent wind in my face. And then we throw in the gust of 40 to 45 over the past couple of hours. And we're expecting, based on reading some of the inside forecast discussions from the Weather Service offices like out of Mount Holly, Philadelphia, that the highest winds will be from this afternoon through late tonight. And that high wind warning goes until 6 a.m. Tomorrow morning. Stephen? It's a bit sporty out here today on the beach. I'm from this area, and you never get, I don't want to say tired, but as many times as I've been here over the past almost 70 years and seen this, it never gets old. It's just amazing the force of the atmosphere. And in this situation, no evacuations. There will be some overwash on some of the highways, but I think we're going to get through this in pretty good shape if you take away the aspect of the erosion on the beaches, because 40, 45, maybe a 50-mile-an-hour wind gust is not going to cause really any damage or knock out little, if any, power based on what we've seen so far. Here comes, see how the water's still coming up here?
Yeah.
It's having a tough time going out with this wind.
Exactly. That's the biggest concern with all of this, Mike, is, yeah, we watch the tidal charts because the worst of it expected at high tide, but there's really no low tide when you got a major wind event like this, constant 30, 40 mile per hour winds, keeping it slamming up against the beach. Hey, Fox weather specialist Mike Seidel, thank you. We'll continue to check in, of course, in the hours ahead from Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Let's take you about an hour south of there to Rehoboth Beach, where we have Fox weather storm specialist Mike Seidel, who's there. And Mike, it seems like every time we talk, even though we got out of the high tide cycle, the wind allowing that rough surf to get closer and closer to you.
Yeah, so we decided to come up on the famous Rehoboth Beach Boardwalk. Millions have been on over the years, and we're looking from north to south, and we've got a few folks out here. Here's a family coming up the boardwalk. We want to now take you out to the beach. There were more out here earlier, lunchtime, early afternoon, trying to get their photo ops in. Lincoln, I'm going to put my back to the camera, walk out here. This is the walkway through the dune. Pretty impressive dune line here. It does its job. It's doing its job today, because if we didn't have this dune line, the water would likely be on the boardwalk. But we've had the water go in the dune line through the afternoon as the wind has been howling northeast 25 to 30 sustained since this morning, and now gusting still over 40 miles an hour. The rain has been minimal, about a quarter of an inch so far for the entire storm. Right now we're getting some light rain, we're getting blowing sand, and this is the dune, and the water has been up in it at high tide earlier. High tide was about 10 minutes of 1, so we're about 4 hours past high tide, and the water just recently was coming almost up to the fence. So we've got a pretty substantial dune line. I'm not worried about water getting into the boardwalk, but we have another high tide coming up about 1 a.m. tonight, a little after midnight, and that one will likely be a little bit higher because progressively the wind is piling the water up and it's not getting out as far as it should typically. And then the high tide early tomorrow afternoon. And that's why the Weather Service here for the Maryland, Delaware coast, we've got Wakefield, Virginia. We also have Mount Holly, Philadelphia, guys and gals up there in Mount Holly. Keeping those flood warnings, coastal flood warnings up through 8 p.m. Monday. Also, the high wind warning, that is up until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Winds could still gust to 60 miles an hour, but so far, the highest wind gust we've seen on the Maryland, Delaware coast is 51 miles an hour. What we're also feeling now is the top of the beach is drying out, so we're getting some blowing sand here. You can feel that stinging. But look at the surf out here. These are heavy hitters. The buoy just off Bethany Beach, just down to our south, is reporting wave heights as high as 10 to 12 feet. Significant wave heights. That's the top third of the highest waves. But look how they're curling and rolling in. Just a rough afternoon, and obviously there's a rip current issue, but nobody's going in the water. By the way, water temperature still not bad, around 70. I got into it a little bit when the wave came up, but not too shabby, because a lot of nor'easters are a lot colder than this. As you well know, many nor'easters bring snow. This one is all about rainfall. Temperatures right now here have dropped from about 65 down to 60, and you can actually feel the difference, Stephen, just in a 5-degree drop, especially with the salt air, the sea foam, a little bit of rain, and now I can feel the sand in my hands, the sand on the beach blowing down the beach. So a few people out on the beach, a few people on the boardwalk. All in all, just a really nasty day here. But once again, as you go inland, the wind does drop off significantly. The sustained winds are not nearly as high here. They're running more like 15 to 20 miles an hour versus out here 25 to 30 miles an hour. Rainfall is not an issue anymore. So it's all about getting through tonight and tomorrow's high tides on these beaches. And then after that, everything goes east out to sea, and then we've got high pressure. That's one of the reasons we have all the wind today. The big, cold, high pressure up over Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, combining with the low pressure down over and just off the Outer Banks, the combined pressure gradient, the 1-2 punch creating the wind. But as we get into Tuesday and beyond, it'll be just the high pressure. These winds will subside later Tuesday. Tuesday won't be quite as windy, Stephen. And then the rest of the week through the weekend looks just incredible. Just some tasty fall weather for this area.
Yeah, finally, we earned ourselves some good fall weather. Definitely you, Mike, being out in the teeth of this nor'easter. Mike, thank you for that update from Rehoboth Beach. About an hour south of there, we got Rehoboth Beach, and that is where our very own Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel is at. And Mike, I mean, you've been out there for hours now, and it finally looks like you're not alone. A couple more people joining you there on the beach.
Yeah, that's been the scene all day. We've had folks coming out, although earlier with the water up to the dune, they were on the boardwalk and up on the benches, but now they're out on the beach trying to get their photo ops, trying to get some video of this nor'easter. A lot of folks don't get to see this, even though they may live a couple of hours away. They come down for vacation in the summer. We don't have weather like this unless we have a tropical system, and so that gives them a chance to really get some good video and pictures like we're showing you here on Fox Weather, up and down. The hat almost blew down to Dewey Beach, up and down the East Coast. There's the surf. Now, let me give you an idea of the tides. Low tide now at 7:15, so we're just a little under 2 hours of low tide, and this water is higher than it should be at high tide right now. So that gives you an idea of how high the water is. Also, you'll notice behind me, sand is now blowing down the beach because the surface is dried out, so we're getting a little sandblasting here. And the water will be back up here. In fact, it'll probably be higher at high tide later on tonight around 1 a.m. in the morning because of the continued push with these winds sustained at about 30 miles an hour right off the Atlantic from the northeast. We're still getting a little bit of light rainfall, but you'll notice that overall, there goes the hat. I better go get this. How far do I have to run? You know, heck with it. I'm just going to hold it right now. Need a little extra moose. The thing of the matter is, it's the high tide tonight. It's going to be a little higher. And then we have another one tomorrow at around 1:30 in the afternoon. So the coastal flood warning goes for tonight into tomorrow until 8 p.m. tomorrow evening. And then we'll be out of the woods because the storminess is going to move off the coast and out of here. Tuesday morning, maybe some residual clouds, but Tuesday afternoon on, a great stretch of great fall weather here on the Delaware and Maryland coast. As we've been showing you, there is water in the streets in downtown Ocean City. No water in the streets here. I have not seen any reports in Dewey or Bethany. But again, you have those spots on the back bays, like in Dewey Beach, where the water does come in, like we've seen with Jay Menard up there in New Jersey. So, Stephen, a pretty healthy nor'easter. The pressure is not super low down there, about 996 millibars. And that, along with the big cold high, which has produced all the frost and freezing temperatures in recent mornings, crossing over Atlantic Canada, the combination of those two have led to this wind. It's not just the low down in North Carolina, off the North Carolina coast. It's the combination of the two creating this very strong gradient wind, as we call it, due to the tight pressure gradient. And it's sustained 25 to 30. It's been like that since early this morning before sunrise. Our peak wind gusts I've seen on the Delaware coast, about 45 miles an hour. So we haven't gotten to 50 or even 60, which is mentioned in the high wind warning, but that goes until 6 a.m. So we'll see how it fleshes out. But my guide is now, if we haven't seen a 60-mile-an-hour wind so far, we're probably not going to see it. But the worst of the weather will stay right here on the beaches. More beach erosion expected and some coastal overwash. But inland, again, reemphasizing the fact that when you have what we call a warm nor'easter, where there's no snow involved, when you get away from the coast, the wind drops off, and you don't have these issues. So it's just kind of a rainy, lousy Sunday. Good day to be inside watching Fox weather.
Yeah, it's a good day. Hey, by the way, Mike, you're not the only one on the team that's lost a hat today. We had Bane Froney, she lost hers, Jay Minar. So that's the common theme with a big wind event like this, as you had described, Mother Nature snatching some hats today and taking them along the shore and the coastline. Mike, thank you for that update.
Rehoboth Beach is where we find Fox Weather's Mike Seidel. Been a bit of a quiet hurricane season, so I haven't gotten to talk to you that much lately, Mike. But there we go. We've got a decent non-tropical low, a pretty solid coastal storm going on here. And, yeah, the waves have been pretty impressive, haven't they?
They have. In fact, we're still running 10 to 12 footers off the coast. The beaches, too, 8 to 10 footers crashing on shore through the afternoon, and just a real stiff wind. Continuing right now, northeast at about 25 to 30 miles an hour. That really hasn't changed since before sunrise, and we've had gusts up over 40 miles an hour. We haven't seen anything over 50 or even close to 60. No complaints there. The other thing we haven't seen has been a lot of rain. Now, we're getting some light rain right now, accentuated by the wind and the blowing sand and the sea foam. But so far today, about a quarter-inch of rain. A lot of dry air came in around the south end of this upper-level low and kept most of the heavy rain out of here. You can hear my jacket flapping now, my hood flapping. I've got this up because of the rain and also because of the sand being picked up by these gusty winds. So, Ari, we still have the high wind warning through tomorrow morning. It's going to be a loud night right here on the coast. Also, the coastal flood warning. Next high tide about 1 a.m. We've got a low tide right now, and then another high tide early tomorrow afternoon. Those are the two high tides of concern. We will see some more overwash and certainly some more beach erosion. Here's the dune line right here. And this afternoon at high tide, and even an hour or two beyond high tide, we had the water coming up into the dune. And it's hard to see now that we've lost daylight, but we've lost some sand. We'll likely lose some more sand over the next two high tide cycles. By Tuesday, everything moves out to sea and east of here. So that's going to put an end to the strong gusty winds. It'll still be breezy here Tuesday, but then the sun will come out in the afternoon, and then from that point on, it's smooth sailing for quite a few days. Some really good fall weather here on the Delaware and Maryland coast. But this is based on what I've heard from the locals. The highest the water has been this season, including Hurricane Aaron and also Hurricane, Imelda. Wasn't a hurricane at the point when the wave action was coming here, but both of those tropical systems were offshore, but the swell came in and we had those northeast winds, and the water was pretty high. It did cover up the beach, but it didn't go quite as far into the dune, or didn't go into the dune line as we've seen today.
I can hear just a really interesting sound there. It's almost like soothing ASMR. Like, it just sounds like there's water droplets, like you're right next to an aquarium or something like that. What exactly am I hearing there? Can you tell?
I don't know what you're hearing. All I hear is myself and the surf and the rain. I don't know. That's an interesting comment. There's the surf. If you can see, can you see that, Ari? Put some light out on the surf there.
Pretty tough to see it. We can hear it though.
Yeah. And this is low tide right now, and it's higher than it typically is during high tide in the summer, when it's a normal Atlantic and we don't have the situation with this nor'easter, this big storm that's just off the North Carolina coast. Now, a secondary low is going to try to form, and that's going to hold in the wind and the rain, especially parts of Jersey and New York, Long Island, southern New England, into tomorrow morning's rush hour. By the way, not surprising, all the New York City airports, plus Boston, Philadelphia, and Reagan National have had ground delay programs all day. They continue through later on tonight, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. But we're still going to have some pretty fresh, gusty northeast winds and some rain in the morning. So I expect at least the New York City airports to go under ground delay programs once again.
Yeah, Mike, you were commenting on how this is kind of a unique storm. We're going to have the secondary low that develops. I feel like this thing is really just taking its time and crawling along, right? You get a lot of these coastal storms where, they'll accelerate quite a bit as they move up. They're moving up toward the northeast, and then it's kind of a quick hitter. High pressure is set up somewhere over the Ohio Valley or the northeast. This is a unique setup. We've got that high that's kind of suppressing things up over northern Canada. And honestly, I kind of thought the worst day in the northeast was going to be today on Sunday, but it's starting to look like, the high tides might be a little worse tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the high tide here is going to be a little bit higher than it was earlier. And that's because the water's having a tough time going out. It continues to be pushed towards the beaches with that stiff northeast wind.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Mike, thanks for the report there. We appreciate it. I think it's just a bunch of water droplets that we're hearing. That's going to be the jury might still be out, but there's a lot. But yeah, I guess you've got a decent amount of rain that's been coming down. You see some video from here earlier. The waves have been impressive, haven't they?
Yes, they have. In fact, the rain came back in about an hour ago. It looks like a deformation axis right along the Delaware coast from the Delaware Bay down towards Ocean City. There's this line of showers that's pelting us. Not incredibly heavy, but it is, whoa, it is annoying. Hold on there. I don't want to lose my, I'm going to hold on to my hat. I don't want to lose my earbuds either. So the winds are still gusting close to 40 miles an hour. It is a nasty night out here. The only thing that could make it worse if the temperature was any colder, it's now right around 59 or 60, so it's come down. And I don't know if you can see behind me, but the sand is being picked up by these winds. So we've got some blowing sand, and we still have the high surf, 8 to 10 footers crashing onto the beaches here. And that surf has been eating away, especially at time of high tide. Now, we just had a low tide about 45 minutes ago. The next one's going to be due in around 1 a.m. in the morning, and then another one early Monday afternoon. Those two high tides are of concern. The coastal flood warning goes until 8 o'clock tomorrow night, and this steady onshore wind continues to keep the water from going out. So the low tide is not as low as it should be. In fact, right now, the low tide is about where high tide is on a typical summer day when you're here enjoying much better weather than this. Although it is raining, we've only had about a third of an inch of rain so far here at Rehoboth Beach, Ari. That has become a non-issue. If you remember the models a few days ago, we were thinking 3, 4, maybe 5 inches of rain here, and they did have the flood watches up, and they dropped them this morning when it was obvious that was not going to happen. So today, tonight, tomorrow, or what's left of today, through overnight and tomorrow, the window of concern with this nor'easter. The main storm is off North Carolina. Secondary is trying to form east and northeast of here. Whatever does happen, it's all moving out later tomorrow and tomorrow night. So we're going to be in much better shape by Tuesday. And then the rest of the week looks stellar. However, today we've had ground delay programs, Ari, at all the New York City airports, Newark, LaGuardia, and JFK. We also have a ground delay program continuing this evening at Boston's Logan, Philadelphia, and Reagan National. And expect more issues tomorrow, especially in the New York City area to Boston. We still have this very tight pressure gradient. That's the storm combined with a very chilly high moving across Atlantic Canada, across New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And it's the combination of the wind around the belly of the high and around the top of the storm. It creates the squeeze effect, and we often see this when we have these nor'easters. A lot of the wind, it's because of the 1-2 combination, not from the storm itself. And in the winter, that cold high produces a lot of snow. But remember, because I've seen this discussed online, that a nor'easter is not necessarily a snowstorm. It just means there's a prevailing wind from the northeast. And that's what we have tonight here on the beaches of Delaware. So Ari, yes, not a great night out here, but it could be colder. I've been in nor'easters where the temperatures are 40 or 45, and it's even more miserable than it is right now.
Yeah, Mike, it's wild because I was sitting there looking at the radar, and it just looks like this kind of weak little band of rain that's around. If you didn't know what the pressure gradient was, you wouldn't imagine that we would go out to you, and it sounds like you're in the middle of a tropical storm or something. But I found that fascinating. You said the sand is actually getting picked up and blown around, even though I imagine it's pretty wet. Do you see that very often?
No, You know, earlier today it did get picked up because the water was, let's go up to the dune line here. Lincoln's out here dealing with the elements at his back. But earlier today, and I think you're showing some of that video, the water came up to the dune line. So here it is. Here's the fence. And you can see some of the sand erosion here. This is sand that's been blown up towards the fence. The water was into the dune, and it was taking sand out. And we expect the high tide that's coming in here in about another 5 hours will take more sand out. But this is a wide dune. No expectations of any water getting into the on the boardwalk or anything like that. But, you know, we talked about Bowers Beach. We've got the Back Bay flooding in parts of Dewey, also Ocean City, downtown Ocean City. Not that unusual to see water in the streets there when you have the water up due to the wind and the push of the wind, and also when you have heavy rainfall because of, obviously, the water table surrounded by the bay and the ocean there in downtown Ocean City. So, Ari, just a steady, persistent wind, 25 to 30 miles an hour, and this pelting rain continues, where we're going to keep an eye on the high tides late tonight and again Monday afternoon, and just reemphasizing the fact that this is all going to pull away on Tuesday, and it'll be much better. Well, we mentioned this earlier. I talked to Captain Jeff Giles, who runs the lifeguards here, and he was here all summer. And the water today got higher than it did with Aaron and also Imelda and Umberto. The swells from Imelda and Umberto impacted here a couple weeks ago. Then we had Aaron back in, late August? So there you go. A non-tropical system with the wind spread out, as tropical systems have the winds tighter, is causing more of a headache for the locals here than those two hurricanes that were offshore.
Yeah, it certainly is. Man, miserable night out there in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, but spot that Mike Seidel probably doesn't mind being too much. Man loves the elements. We'll check back in, Mike. I appreciate it. They're a little bit after low tide right now. You know, the rain's been pretty on and off, I would say. They've been in and out of some heavy showers, but they're in a pretty decent band right now. Let's go out to Mike Seidel. He's out there in the wind and the rain, just a miserable night. You know, nor'easters can be a lot colder than this, so I guess you've got that on your side to some degree. I'm sure you've been in ones way colder than this. I feel like if this was a winter storm, it would have a lot of snow associated with it, especially up in New England. But just rainy, a little bit on the cool side. And what are we expecting at the next high tide, which is, what, a little bit after 1 a.m. or so?
Yes, indeed. About 4.5 hours away from now, so we're a little bit just a little past midpoint between low tide and high tide. Actually, we're closer to low tide. But what's going to happen is the water's going to come back up and take over the whole beach. And as a result, we're going to see more erosion. The water got into the dune line earlier today. Let's show you some of that video from earlier. I believe we've got that turned around. I sent that in earlier, and you can see what it was like. Most of this was shot between about 12:30 and 2 p.m. this afternoon. And you can see how the beach was basically covered up by the surf and the sea foam with all those waves. And the waves were still hitting the dune here more than an hour and change past high tide, which goes to show you that this onshore persistent wind from the northeast at 25 to 30 miles an hour, this gust to 40 plus, pushes the water in as it's trying to go out. And when you have successive high tide cycles, that leads to issues not only on the coast but in the back bays where the water is trying to get out and it gets locked in. And that's why we have the back bay flooding, not only in Delaware and Maryland, but up in New Jersey, down in Ocean City, Maryland. That water not coming in from the Atlantic, but coming in from Cineplex Bay, also Assawoman Bay to the north. Back here, the other issue is the wind. Now, we haven't seen any winds clocked over 50 or even close to 60 miles an hour as expected. The high wind warning goes for another, 9.5 hours till 6 a.m. in the morning. After that, they'll probably drop it back to an advisory. And it's still going to be wind, sustained wind and gusty winds tomorrow. But as we go through tomorrow afternoon into Tuesday, the sustained winds will come down and the gustiness will tend to go away. So by Tuesday, we'll just have that prevailing northeast and north wind. As the sun returns, we think, he says with confidence, Tuesday afternoon for the rest of the week, and next weekend looks tremendous. Although yesterday wasn't too bad, today has been a complete washout, although there was a fair amount of people already out here on the boardwalk and then on the beach after the tide went out a little bit by mid-afternoon, getting their photo ops in. A lot of selfies, a lot of folks shooting video, and even people that have grown up in this area, say in Baltimore and Washington, they don't get to experience a nor'easter that often down at the beach, because when they're down here, it's typically, May through Labor Day, Memorial Day to Labor Day, and nor'easters are not prevalent. They're more of a cold season storm. So for some of these folks I talked to, it was the first time they'd experienced a nor'easter right at the beach, and they were rather impressed with the surf. And having grown up here, I'm always impressed with the surf. When you see 8 to 10 footers, this isn't exactly the pipeline in Hawaii. This is the East Coast, and surfers sometimes have to take what they can get as far as good surfing.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty cool to actually see what it looks like when you're actually there, right? It's one thing to see it on TV or to hear about it, et cetera. But let me ask you a quick question. I know we talk about this a lot with tropical systems when it specifically comes to storm surge, right? So we talk about how it's not only the strength of the wind that's pushing on shore, it's also the duration of the wind coming in from that direction that can really, make an event worse. Is this going to be the case also here? Is that why we're expecting the next couple of high tide cycles to be worse, even though the wind may not be quite as strong, just that it's going to be getting kicked in there for so long?
Yeah, that's exactly right. When we had the March 62 storm, the Ash Wednesday storm here, and it pretty much decimated the entire Maryland, Delaware coast down into Virginia, it was 4 or 5 high tide cycles that did it. And we're going to be doing 2 to 3, but this is not the same animal as we had in March of 1962. With that said, the high tide, specifically at 1 a.m., roughly 1 a.m. in Maryland, Delaware coast, will probably be a little bit higher than the one tomorrow afternoon, but the warning will go through tomorrow evening. I don't think they're going to back off on that. And some of the flooding later tonight could be in the moderate stage. We're talking about above dry ground, a couple of feet of inundation. And that's not going to matter here per se. It's going to cause more beach erosion. There is some overwash. We've talked about Bowers Beach and again in the Back Bay. But it does matter when you're talking about trying to keep these beaches nice and pristine. I know it's only October. We got a long way to go till next season. But they like to keep the sand on the beaches. They just went through a beach replenishment here last year. In fact, I remember being here in June and July, and they were working from Rehoboth down to Dewey Beach. And they were in the Dewey area around the 4th of July last year, 2024. So it's like every 3 or 4 years, the Corps of Engineers gets out here and pumps the sand in, keeping the beaches wide, because that's why people come here. I mean, sure, it's the Thrasher's French fries and the Fisher's popcorn, but they also come because they want to get out on these beaches. And if you don't have a beach at high tide, you don't have people coming down here because the word gets around fast. There's not any beach around. So they keep replenishing them every 3 or 4 years, and then we have to deal with the atmosphere, and as they say, Mother Nature and nor'easters. And many times, many years, they lose a lot more sand here from nor'easters, coastal storms, than they do from tropical systems.
Yeah, I mean, these storms, they can take different forms different times a year, right? And Mike Seidel out there in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Thanks a lot for the report. It's always good seeing what you're dealing with out there on the ground. If the temperature was 40 degrees and we had a cold rain falling, the temperature is actually more like close to 60, but I'm sure it doesn't feel great with that wind whipping like it is, Mike.
No, it doesn't. Most of today it was dry. We had a little bit of a mist and blowing sea foam, but the rain really didn't kick in until after about 6:30. This band has been setting up and down the coast. It's not pouring rain, but you can probably hear it hitting my coat and jacket this evening. I don't know if you can see the surf. We're heading towards low tide earlier today, and then when we headed towards low tide, the water stayed up. And in fact, right now, it's about where it is in the summertime at high tide. So that puts it in perspective. So the tide is coming in, and the next high tide is due in about 1 a.m. here on the Maryland-Delaware coast. And I want to show you how far the water is going to get. Remember, the tidal difference here is about 5 feet this go around. That means between low and high tide, the water is 5 feet higher. And here's the dune up here. It's a pretty wide dune, pretty hefty. We've got a bunch of sea ocean clams. Here's the fence. So you can see how the sand has come up here. And the water has come into the dune up into this area. That was at high tide earlier. but the next high tide is forecast to be a bit higher. One of the reasons is we've got this push of northeast winds sustained at 25 to 30 miles an hour, and it's been like that since early this morning. And it's not going away, not with this pressure gradient. Now, the past hour or so, we've had the higher wind gust up in New Jersey. The marina in Atlantic City is gusted to 56. We had one gust 59 miles an hour. So they're getting stronger gusts up there because the gradient between the storm down over and just off the coast of North Carolina and the high up over Atlantic Canada, gradient's a little bit tighter there. So the winds, the gusts have been running about 10 to 15 miles an hour higher at peak, more like 10 miles an hour higher. And even so, you're talking about wind gusts in the 50s, that really doesn't cause much of the issue as far as structural damage. I did check power outages here in the state of Delaware about a half an hour ago, about 170 customers. That's hardly a drop in the bucket. Over in the state of Maryland, about 1,100 customers without power. Higher amounts, a few more customers without power in New Jersey. But overall, the power outage situation is in pretty good shape right now. Travel situation today has not been great. Northeast airports, the three New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, Reagan National, still under ground delay programs late tonight. And more than likely, they'll kick in again tomorrow in the morning time, because tomorrow morning's commute there is going to be pretty sporty. You're going to have the rain, you're going to have wind gusts still up over 40, maybe 50 miles an hour on the South Shore, Long Island, and that would include some of the airports too, Newark, JFK, and also LaGuardia up there on the north side of the city, northeast side of the city. So with that in mind, keep in mind if you are flying in and out of the northeast or flying in that direction, you may have more problems again tomorrow. By Tuesday, everything pulls out and goes out into the Atlantic, and the winds will gradually calm down and the rain will go away. I suspect by Tuesday afternoon here it's going to be pretty darn nice, and the rest of the week through next weekend looks especially stellar for fall weather, leaf peeping along the northeast corridor down here into the mid-Atlantic. So Ari, not many power outages, rainfall, not a big deal here. Right now we're right around 4/10 of an inch for the entire storm. That's it, 4/10 of an inch. So the totals originally forecast 3 or 4 days ago were way out of whack, and the forecast adjusted itself. This is a very tough forecast on the track, and we were looking at the forecast of the various models back on, say, Monday, Tuesday, and we were thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be really, really bad. But as it turns out, it's not turned out as bad as it seemed back then. But the models adjusted themselves, the pressures aren't as low, and things work themselves out. But we still have a fair amount of rain to go north of here, northern half of New Jersey, parts of New York State, southern New England, and we still have the wind and the high tides. 2 more high tide cycles to deal with here in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Hey, we got this. Mike, thanks a lot for staying up late with us here during this extended coverage. I know it's not your first rodeo, but it does not look very fun out there after a few. I know the first couple are always fun, right? You love the elements, and then after a while, it's kind of like, all right, I'm ready to go back to the hotel, right?
Well, like I said all along, I've been doing this for 30 years, but if it was 40 or 45 degrees, it would be a lot less comfortable. Then again, I'd be wearing more layers. Right now, I've got 2 layers on, so I'm right on the gray area, needing another layer. Temperature right now is 59.
You gotta love it. I always love covering weather with Mike Seidel. He's a legend in the business. Mike, get some rest, man. We appreciate everything you've done for us tonight.